Alright guys, so today I'm going to be doing CHING number 120. I'm really trying to get back on track with my CHINGs and getting caught up. So like I said, you'll probably be seeing more of them more frequently. So the first item I have is a Clinique lipstick that sold for $39.99, and that came from a flea market. At one point I had purchased a bunch of Lancome and Clinique and Estee Lauder lipsticks someone was selling at a flea market. So that's why you've been seeing a lot of those lately in these cha-chings. Next item I have was a cast iron Santa on a sleigh. This was like a pendulum, like it swung back and forth. That sold for $139.99. Eric and I did pick that up at an auction. And funny enough, I actually have a piece to another one of these. I can't remember where I found that one piece. It might have been at another auction, but it didn't have the base part that it sits on. So maybe I'll come across the other part to that so I can sell it again for that much, but we'll see. Next item did go to a subscriber named Sandra. She purchased a book that I sold. This was by Sylvia Brown called Life on the Other Side. That sold for $3.99. That did come from an auction. It came with some other stuff that I won. I also sold a Dymo labeling kit for $39.99. That also came from an auction. I'd say we paid about $4 or $5 for that. Next, I have a Susan Wingate tray. These were by Port Mirion, and some of these pieces can sell really well. They are Christmas themed, and she just designed all sorts of these ones. And I have sold different pieces from this line already before, so when I do see them, I know to definitely keep an eye out on them. This piece in particular sold for $41.99, and it did come from an auction. I also sold a Buyer's Choice figure. This was a Nutcracker vendor that sold for $69.99, and that came from an auction, and I would say we paid maybe $12 for him. When the Buyer's Choice was being sold, they were being sold like on a tray of different ones, and then you had to take the whole tray at a certain price point. So like if I purchased a tray that had 4 on, I'd pay $11 a piece for each, Buyer's Choice figure. Next item we have is a Griswold. This was a cast iron skillet, number 11 to be precise. That sold for $275, and that came from an auction. Eric has really been starting to get into reselling the cast iron Griswold pans, so he knows a little bit more about those than I do. I also sold an American Girl. This was an Angelina Ballerina Alice Mouse plushie that sold for $26.99. That came from a yard sale. I had purchased a couple different pieces of these like American Girl Angelina Ballerina pieces at a yard sale, and I think I paid $10 for all of the pieces, but I lotted them out. I also sold a pair of Vionic boots for $59.99. Those probably came from a yard sale, so I'd say maybe $5 for those. Next item was an Allegra's window plush. So this was like an older TV show, like not necessarily a TV show, like a cartoon back in the day called Allegra's Window. I think it was on Nickelodeon. That sold for $22.99, and that came from a yard sale. I'd say I paid 50 cents to $1 for it. I also sold, this next item went to a subscriber named Megan. She purchased an Anchor, this is by Anchor Toys. It was a wooden barn play set that sold for $54.99, and that did come from an auction. And I do remember it, like most of the things that I get at an auction, sometimes like it comes with other stuff, like it's not just that one item. So I know that did come with some other stuff, but I can't remember what else it came with off the top of my head. I also sold a set of 2 needlepoint Christmas stockings. One was embroidered mom and the other dad. Those sold for $49.99 and they came from an auction. I say I paid maybe $6 or $7 for those. Next was a Five Nights at Freddy's Funko Pop Foxy Pirate with Freddy figure. This came from an auction, and I think we had multiples of this, or we had other Funko Pops. We had gotten so much like Five Nights at Freddy's stuff at the auction that day. This sold for $59.99, and I'd say grand scheme we paid maybe $10 for that. I also sold a vintage Japan. This was a ceramic bell, little ornaments of a Santa and angel. It was sold for $39.99, and I can't remember off the top of my head where those came from. Auction or yard sale. I also sold a Metallica pin and postcard for $19.99. That came from a yard sale. I had purchased like quite a few pieces of vintage Metallica postcards and pins and stickers and things like that, and I think she charged me $10 for the whole tray, and I already sold quite a few sets of those. I also sold an alto recorder for $49.99. Eric actually won this at an auction. This item went to a subscriber named Tammy. This was for a lot of 17 bottle brush trees. Those sold for $63.89, and they came from an auction as well. Same with this. This next piece came from a yard sale. This was for an Alaskan Canadian geese wood puzzle. This was from a yard sale. It sold for $17.99. I think I paid $1 or $2 for it at the yard sale. I also sold a set of vintage Belle de Paris pantyhose for $10.99. Those came from a yard sale as well, and I think I paid $0.25 for them. Next item we have is a Rushton elf plush that sold for $99.99, and that came from a Fill-A-Bag rummage sale. I also sold a Monster High doll. This was of Elissa Bat. That sold for $65.99, and that came from a tub full of Monster High dolls that I purchased at a yard sale. I also sold a KitchenAid. This was a Chef's Chopper mini food processor that sold for $32.99, and I think that came from a yard sale or an auction. Next item we have is a Fisher-Price Little People. This was a Nativity Advent Calendar. Sold for $69.99. That came from a yard sale, and I'd say I paid $4 or $5 for that. Next item also came from a yard sale. It was a Hello Kitty glass ornament that sold for $19.99, and I paid $1 for that. I sold a Wonders of the Wild crystal fish for $39.99. Eric actually picked this up at a yard sale, and I'd say he paid $5 or less for it. Next we have a Mexican folk art piece. This was of an opossum with her babies. This thing was absolutely amazing. We won this at an auction. It sold for $300. I also sold a Lowell Davis from a friend to a friend. This was a figural piece that sold for $189.99. That came from one of the folk art auctions we had gone to. I sold a Avon hair towel from $19.99. It was still sealed in its original packaging for $9.99, and that probably came from a yard sale, and I'd say I spent $0.25 on it. Next was this really cute like spaghetti hair looking doll. It was like a ceramic, and it was by someone named Lino Zampiva. It was Italian. That sold for $39.99, and I won that at an auction, and I'd say I paid about maybe $5 or $6 for her. I sold a set of Longaberger candy cane ornaments for $39.99. Those came from a yard sale, and I'd say I paid $2 or $3 for those. I also sold a set of 2 German grandma and grandpa incense smokers for $69.99. Those came from a yard sale, and I think we paid maybe $5 a piece for them, so $10 altogether. Next item went to a subscriber named Diane. This was for a Japanese, they call these stockinette dolls, that sold for $20.50, and that came from an auction, and she came with some other stuff that I won at an auction. Next item also came from an auction. This was for a Lennox Winnie the Pooh figure of Tigger and Roo. That sold for $89.99, and like I said, that did come from an auction. I sold a Disney Cogsworth from Beauty and the Beast figure for $12.99. Pretty sure that came from a yard sale, and I'd say I paid $1 for him. I sold a Royal Dalton figure. Her name was Isadora. She sold for $42.99, and that also came from an auction. Next was a Bratz doll of Formal Funk Dana. She sold for $59.99, and she came from, I'm trying to think of where she came from. I know it wasn't an auction, so it had to have been a yard sale, and I'd say I paid maybe $3 for her. I sold a Department 56. This was a Christmas Story village piece of a police car that sold for $74.99. That came from an auction as well. Next item came from a yard sale. This was vintage from 1989. It was a Mickey Mouse Scrub-A-Dub bath toy that sold for $25.99, and I'd say I paid $2 for that. Next was a Mary Kay Velocity for Him cologne that sold for $55.99. That came from a yard sale, and I'd say $2 or $3 for that. I sold a Polly Pocket Jeweled Palace playset for $59.99, and that came from a yard sale. I also sold a Boyd's Bears Woodbury plush. His name was Mickleby. He sold for $7.99, and I feel like he came with some other stuff that I won at an auction. I also have another perfume. This one was an Avon perfume in the Scent Today, Tomorrow, Always. Sold for $39.99, and that came from an auction, and I'd say $1 or $2 for that. Also another Bratz doll. This was Passion for Fashion Sasha. She sold for $49.99, and she also came from a yard sale. The same yard sale I'm pretty sure the other one had come from. I sold a Nippon hat pin holder with 10 hat pins on it for $59.99. That did come from an auction. Next was a set of Bohemian wine glasses. These were really, really nice. Those sold for $199.99, and we won those at an auction, and I'd say we paid less than $50 for them. I also sold 18 pieces of green Bakelite flatware for $51, and I got those at a yard sale, and I paid $1 for all of them. Not $1 a piece, $1 for all of them. I also sold a pair of vintage Oshkosh corduroy cowboy bear overalls for $26.99. Got those at a yard sale, and I'd say I paid 50 cents or $1 for those. Next was a vintage pink frosted glass candy dish. This had a really nice, like, kind of atomic look to it. That sold for $39.99. It came from a yard sale, and I'd say I paid $5 for that one. I also sold a button-down men's shirt for $15, and that came from a yard sale. I'd say $1 for that. And the last thing that I have went to a subscriber named Karen. She had purchased a Nippon two-handled cake plate for $21.49, and that probably came from an auction, but might have come from a yard sale. That is everything that I have for this cha-ching. In my last cha-ching, I told you guys I was going to start letting you know, like, if my sales are up or down or that type of thing. So, as stated, these cha-chings are from a while ago. There aren't ones that were from this week or anything like that, because I am behind with my cha-chings. However, as of today, as of today that I am recording this video, the last 30, I should say last 31 days, because that's what I looked at. My last 31 days, my sales are up 39.3%. So I just filmed a Ching, I want to say it was last week. I was up 27.2%. So I'm up higher as of today than I was last time I recorded my last Ching. So it's always good to be up and not down. So thankfully, you know, my sales are still on the up side. I do think, you know, sales are going good. You know, obviously some days I have better sales than others, but you know, every day I'm at least selling something. So that's always good. So I don't really have anything much about eBay. I do have one return coming. Someone had purchased a book, and I guess he said that his wife had like already ordered him one and he didn't realize. He said he didn't even open the package, but you know, obviously he's returning it because he doesn't need 2 of them. So that's unfortunate, but you know, I'm gonna get it back and I will just relist it, and I know it will resell again. So that's just what happens, you know, when you're reselling. You will get returns. It's just inevitable. So that is a return that will be on its way back to me. There have been times though where like people open a return and then never send the item back. So I'm assuming, you know, they decided to keep it or that type of thing. And if that ever happens, like once so much time has passed, eBay will just kind of close the return out, because they only have until like a certain day, you know, to get the item shipped back to you. So that's that, and that's pretty much everything I can think of as far as, you know, eBay, how eBay is going. So thankfully it's all going pretty good. So hopefully it's all going pretty good for you guys. You'll have to let me know down in the comments how things are going for you. So hopefully you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.